Then the word of the Lord came to him, saying, Arise, go to Zarephath, which belongs to Sidon, and dwell there. See, I have commanded a widow there to provide for you. So he arose and went to Zarephath. And when he came to the gate of the city, indeed a widow was there gathering sticks. And he called to her and said, Please bring me a little water in a cup that I may drink. And as she was going to get it, he called to her and said, Please bring me a morsel of bread in your hand. So she said, As the Lord your God lives, I do not have bread, only a handful of flour in a bin and a little oil in a jar. And see, I am gathering a couple of sticks that I may go in and prepare it for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die. And Elijah said to her, Do not fear, go and do as you have said, but make me a small cake from it first, and bring it to me, and afterward make some for yourself and your son. For thus says the Lord God of Israel, the bin of flour shall not be used up, nor shall the jar of oil run dry, until the day the Lord sends rain on the earth. So she went away and did according to the word of Elijah, and she and he and her household ate for many days. The bin of flour was not used up, nor did the jar of oil run dry, according to the word of the Lord which he spoke by Elijah. Until verse 16 we read. So as we prepared for the Christmas cantata, and as we did the Christmas cantata, for the starting from the last World Camp until now without rest, God, He is making us so blessed and happy. We don't even have a gap to frown, right? Every day He's making us happy. I had that kind of a heart. So I'm so happy and thankful and joyful. All the people who came for the cantata, no matter who it was, unless they're mentally ill, except for those people, but there was no one else who attended who, after seeing that performance, did not open their heart. It was so touching and it was so happy. It looked like the same thing, but this time there were so many different upgrades in the performance. We didn't even have a moment to not even a second to complain. So that much the performance, the musical was so happy, and God made such a perfect time for us and made us so happy. I had that kind of a heart. So to that God, I'm so thankful. And I was so happy and thankful. In 2 Kings chapter 7, you can see that the famine had already been in Israel for 3 years. It was not raining, so there was no food anywhere in the world, and everyone was just dying. But only in the house of that widow of Zarephath, same problems came, difficulty came, but the flour was not running dry, and the oil was not running dry. There was enough food. So all the family, relatives, I think, would have come to her house to get food. So we can see how blessedly she's living. Even though they meet the same difficulties, some people are not affected by that difficulty, and they live, on the other hand, very beautiful lives. But on the other hand, there are people who, when they face difficulties, it makes us suffer so much. There are people who are dying in that famine. I think there would have been many such people. In the house of the widow of Zarephath, the biggest blessing, I think, the biggest happiness was that the servant of God came to her house. So the word of God came to Elijah, and it said, means the servant of God went to her and he asked her to her house, what do you have in your house? So she said, as the Lord your God lives, I do not have bread, only a handful of flour in a bin and a little oil in a jar. And see, I am gathering a couple of sticks that I may go in and prepare it for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die. And Elijah said to her, do not fear, go and do as you have said, but make me a small cake from it first, and bring it to me, and afterward you make some for yourself and your son. So finally, the bread and that oil, it's just a little bit that she had with the flour and oil. So she wanted to finally eat a little bit with her son and die. But the servant of God, Elijah, came to her and he said, don't eat that bread for yourself. First you make for me. If so, then the bin of flour shall not be used up, nor shall the jar of oil run dry in your house. That is how Elijah spoke. Once, pastor, what he said was, everyone, I want to make you the world's best pastors. But the world's best pastor, he wants to make us the world's best pastors. So the problem is, in one house there was a father and a son. The father also, he did business, and the son also did business. So they used to sell the straw shoes, the olden days straw shoes. But the father, his business was running so well, and the son, his business was not running well at all, even though they were selling the same, that straw shoes. So the son, he was going crazy. How my father, I'm using the same material that he's using to make the shoes, but all these customers, they're only taking what the father is making. Nobody wants to buy what the son was making. So because of that, the son one day, he goes to the father and he says, Father, why my business is not running well? Can you please teach me how the business can run well? So the father did not tell him. So a long time passed after that, and it became the time for the father to pass away. When the father was about to die, now the son was in such a hurry. How if my father just dies like that, how can it be? So he went running to his father. And the father, he is about to die. He's on his last breath. But he shook his father awake and he said, Father, you can't just die like that. Father, at least finally tell me why your business was running so well. You have to teach that to me. So that was the last thing his father said, his son asked from him. So it says that the father, he said, hair, and he died. When you make shoes and when I make shoes, the problem with your shoes is the fine hair on the straw. The father, after he makes the straw, the fine hairs that stick out from the straw shoes, he would cut it off and shave it smooth so that it would be comfortable for people to wear. But the son, he did not do that. And because of that one small difference, the father succeeded and the son did not. So as Pastor Park spoke that story, what he said was, everyone, how do you become the best in the world? It's not because of some big difference. It's just a difference of a fine hair. It's just the difference of the breadth of a sheet of paper. It's very, very thin, very slight. I'm going to teach you how to become the world's best pastors. But the problem is, listening to my words, The people who follow exactly as it is, there are some people like that, but there are some people who don't follow exactly as it is. The difference, that small difference, right now, even though it might not seem to be big, but after 1 year, 2 years, 5 years pass by, there is going to be a great difference. So, Pastor, after he said that, he just said one thing. Everyone, spiritual life is not difficult. It's very simple. Even though you listen to all different kinds of sounds and voices, never listen to the voice that says God will not work, because God will surely work. Everyone that thought that God will not work through me, you have to delete that from your heart. God maybe will not work. If you have this kind of a thought, then that household, your whole household itself, will ruin. What is the difference between a successful business and a failure business? Very much in detail, Pastor explained to us. He said a long time ago, they were friends. So whatever this one friend did, nothing would work out. But another friend, whatever he did, everything would succeed. So one day, the failure friend, he was so difficult. Spiritual life also, there are people who live good spiritual life and some people whose spiritual life really fails. And business also, there are some people who can do spiritual life, business very well and cannot do business well. It's like that, right? So there's surely a reason why it doesn't work out, and surely a reason why it is successful. But the people in detail, they find it very annoying to actually search for the detailed reason. So, this failure friend, one day, because he was in so much difficulty, he went and visited the house of the friend who succeeded. And he said, "Friend, as you know, whatever I do, it is failing. But you, no matter what you do, it is succeeding. What on earth? How is that possible? Can you please teach me the secret?" So he begged and begged his other friend. So the other friend who was successful said, "Oh, is that so? If so, then in your house, why it is not working out well? I want to go and visit your house." So he visited his friend's house. So the friend who was a failure, he had 2 sons, and the friend who was successful, he had 2 sons. So the successful man went to the failure friend's house and told him, "Can you call your sons?" So he called his sons, and then he said to the sons, "You put a ladder next to the roof of your house, and you pull the cow that is in your house and make that cow to climb on the roof through the ladder." So the friend who was always a failure called his sons, and he told his sons, "Go and pull the cow which is tied in the stable, and take a ladder, put it near the roof, and then you pull the cow up the roof." So the sons of the failure father, as soon as they heard him, they said, "Father, do you think what you're saying makes any sense? How can a cow climb up a ladder and go on top of the roof? What are you thinking? That will not work." But the father said, "Just try doing it once. We're telling you, no, it will not work. If you want it so much, then you do. Why are you telling us to do?" So the man who was successful saw this happen, and then he said, "Okay, stop. Would you like to come to my house and visit once?" So they went to the successful friend's house, and there were again 2 sons over there, right? So the father said, "Son, if you bring the cow from the stable, you put a ladder next to the roof of the house, and then you try to pull that cow up the roof." So the sons should be saying like, Father, what are you saying? How is that even possible? But as soon as the father said that, they said, okay, Father, and they went. And the younger son, he went up the roof and he caught onto the rope of the cow and tried to pull it. And the older son, he tried to push the cow from the bottom. And the whole day they tried to make the cow go up the ladder. Finally, did the cow go up the ladder? No, the whole day they did that, but they were enjoying that. But seeing that, the father said, okay, stop it. So then he asked his friend who was a failure, what is the difference between your family and my family? The sons of the failure's friend, if the father tells them something, they would say, Father, you say something that is not nonsense. How can this make any sense? How can a cow go up the roof? What do you think? That is not possible. So they despise the father. Whatever the father says, they cannot accept those words as it is. But the friend who was successful, the sons of that man, they think of him as someone very great. That's why no matter what the father says, they would tell him, yes, Father, yes, Father. And they would do exactly what he told them to do. That is the difference between the house that was a failure and the house that was successful. If you see in the Bible, even in that chapter 17 of 1 Kings, it's the same. And again, there is the story of the wife of the sons of the prophets, right? So that wife of the sons of the prophets, she became a debtor. So I don't know what she did, how she borrowed that much money, but she became a debtor who could not pay back her debt. So finally her two sons, they could not help but be taken away by the people who loaned her money and be sold as slaves. Imagine her sons had to be sold as slaves just to pay back her debt. We are not that big debtors, no? Even though we also have debts. So she owed a big debt, and how painful would it have been for her? So at that time, because she was in so much difficulty, she came looking for Elisha. And Elisha said, listening to her story, what do you have in your house? He asked her. In my house, there's a small jar of oil. So listening to that, he said, oh, is that so? Then from now onwards, you do as I say. You go throughout the whole neighborhood and you borrow empty vessels, and borrow a lot. Why? You borrow those vessels, close the door, and what oil you have in that small jar, you keep on pouring it out into the vessels, and all those vessels will be filled. And then next, every vessel you pour into, it will be filled. And everything gets filled, take the oil and you go and sell it. And you sell that, with that you pay back your debt. And if any money remains with that, you just live happily. Now this, the servant of God Elisha, to that widow, he said this. It is not that he gave her money and said, you pay back your debt. He didn't give her food. He didn't give her anything. What he said is, the man of God Elisha, through the word of God, he gave this kind of fellowship, this kind of counseling to her, right? So then listening to that, for example, hey, how does that make any sense if she thought like that? with that small jar of oil. How can we fill all those huge vessels? Are you telling me to believe this now? Does that make any sense? So the house that is never successful is always this. It always reacts like this. When the church says something, does that make any sense? We cannot even understand. This cannot even happen. This does not make any sense. Always they go in this direction. The house which fails is like this always. But the house which can succeed, how is it? They have the heart to consider the servant of God as great, and because of that, they cannot calculate, right? It doesn't make sense to them. So listening to that, is that so? Then they just do accordingly. So in the wedding feast of Canaan, the wine was lacking. So when the wine was lacking, when Mary came and said that to Jesus, he said, "Woman, what does your concern have to do with me?" When Mary said there is no wine, if imagine you go to a house wedding feast and there is no wine, how bad is it, right? But Jesus told Mary, "Woman, what does your concern have to do with me?" So if it was us listening to that, maybe Jesus is saying that he cannot do anything. Because Jesus said, "My time has not yet come." Maybe now is not the time. So they would have just gone home. But Mary, she didn't just think, maybe it's not yet time for Jesus to work and go back home. Instead, she called the servants and she made the time for God to work. At that time, to the servants, she said, "Whatever Jesus tells you to do, do so." Even though he says something that doesn't make sense to you, even though it is against your concept and your beliefs, whatever he says to you, just do it. So that is the time for God to work. For example, right now, at this time, inside of your heart, no matter what God says, if you can just do as it is, then from today onwards, God, he will work powerfully through you. But the houses, the places where it does not work, they will think, does that really make any sense? Because they have the heart to despise church. That's why they're not able to live spiritual life, because whatever church says, they think, does that make any sense? How is that even going to happen? So because that happens immediately, anything they hear, they feel, does that make any sense? How can that be possible? That is not possible. That is impossible. They cannot be used. They are the most wicked people. So God, they're the people in whom God can no longer work. They always need to understand for them to be able to move. They need to be able to understand for them to accept. So in this world where God, he made all creation, there are so many things which we cannot understand, right? So God, he works beyond our understanding. So then in spiritual life, there is no fun at all. What is there in your house? I have a small jar of oil. Then you go all around the neighborhood and you borrow all the empty vessels and come. Why? You come and then you pour the oil in the vessel, it'll be full. You pour in next vessel, it'll be full. You pour all the vessels like that. And then you sell that oil, pay back the debt, and with the money remaining, you live happily. It sounds so simple. But Does that make any sense? It's such a small jar of oil. How can I fill all those vessels with that? Are you asking me to believe this? If she thinks in that way, then she will not go and borrow those vessels, right? Then what would have happened to her? Her life would have become so miserable. Then what would have happened to that full household? Her two sons would have been sold as slaves. She would have just been a debtor. And as they were being sold, what would she have been saying? Oh, I went to church for so many years. My husband was a servant of God. I only worked hard for church. But why God didn't help me? Why God is not working? Why God is not helping? Why is he only making me difficult like this? They would have complained against God. They would have had resentment against God. Don't you think so? Spiritual life would not have been fun at all. Because they cannot see God working. They cannot see the work of God. So, how can God work? It is just as when Mary said, no matter what he says to you, do it. Oh, when the man of God said, what is there in your house? A little jar of oil. Then you go and borrow all these empty vessels, do this, do like that. Everyone right now, God, he is not directly working like that, but through the church. That God who worked in the Zarephath widow, the God who worked for the wife of the sons of the prophets, he is working in you in the same way through the church. Then the church, why does the church always say something that sounds like nonsense to you? We can do something that makes sense, no, but why do they say such ignorant things, some useless things? Are they asking us to believe that? Are they asking us to really believe that and do like that? The failure house always does that. So in our church, that's why many things seem to be unbelievable. So always when you see the things that happen in the church, we say don't despise the church. Whatever the church says, just do it as it is, whether it is wrong or right. After you do it, if it is wrong, then yes, it was wrong, it didn't work. But the house that is a failure, it always says, what nonsense. They cannot understand. So that small jar of oil, how can it fill all those vessels? Are you really asking me to believe that? If really you want to, then you do. I cannot do. Why? Because it seems like they cannot happen. Why? They don't believe. The fact that that empty vessel will be filled with oil through that jar of oil, if she believed in that, then how happy she would be when she went to borrow the empty vessels, right? Then whenever she went to borrow the empty vessels, she would be so happy. But the problem is, if she did not believe it, then she would have been irritated. How does that make any sense? So even as she was going on the way, everyone would have been uncomfortable and complaining. So for 3 years, there was the famine. And the famine, when it was there, everyone was starving to death. And everyone had so many problems. So finally, they wanted to make that small piece of bread, and she and her son wanted to eat it and die. But the man of God Elijah came there and said, you don't eat that. First you give me that small cake, I will eat, and after that, oil and flour in your house, you'll never run out of it. He said, everything might finish, but that flour and oil, it will not run dry. Have you ever seen a jar of oil or a bin of flour? No matter how much you keep pouring and pouring and pouring, it doesn't finish. There is nothing like that, right? But the man of God, Elijah, spoke those words. If so, then the difference between a successful house and a failure house, what is the difference? When there are people who listen to the father's words in the failure house, the sons, they say, "Father, that doesn't make any sense. That's nonsense. You speak something that is making sense. No. How can the cow climb up the roof?" But what is the problem? That is the reason why that house is a failure. When they went to the house, it was successful. Son, yes, father. In the stable, there is a cow. You bring that cow here. Okay. Put a ladder. Okay. Pull the cow up. Okay. Whatever he says to you, do it. That is the time for God to work. If God, "Oh God, you please help me. God, you please work in me." If God, more than him, sincerely asking for that, everyone in your hearts, no matter what God says, no matter what the church says, "Oh, let's unite in the heart together and do." If he had that kind of a heart in your life, from today onwards, God, he would work powerfully. Spiritual life, it has a direction, right? Going sincerely to the church, working hard for the church, witnessing hard for the church, that is not important. There is a focus of spiritual life. God, the heart in which God cannot help but to work, the heart in which God cannot work, they're both serving God in the same way. The same way famine came, but only in the house of the Zarephath widow, continuously food is coming and coming. All the relatives would have come to her house, right? How did you do like this? How there is food only in your house? God helped me. So you cannot just simply take the flour and go. First you have to listen to the gospel, then only I can give you a flour and oil. So in that widow's house, there was so much food. They're all serving God. They all had the same famine. But other people, they didn't have food in their house. That's why they were saying, "Today let's boil your baby. Tomorrow let's boil my baby." So miserable, right? They are always serving the same God. But some people, they find it very difficult. Some people, they find it very, very happy. It's a very simple thing, everyone. It is not that there's a big difference. It is just the difference of the thickness of a small piece of paper. Only that much difference is there. If I say something, listen to those words and do it exactly as it is. There are some people like that. But then the failure house people, how they say, that doesn't make any sense. That is the house which fails. Everyone, if so, then you, on Sunday, we give the Sunday morning service, right? The reason why we give service, what is the reason? There is a reason for the service. There is a reason for the service. So after listening to the word of God for 1 hour, in our heart, we start to discover what was wrong, and then that gets fixed. And no matter what difficulty or problem comes into my heart, God, he will work in me also. Whatever despair comes, whatever pain comes, whatever difficulty comes, all things, it will change into blessing when I go out. That is normal. But even though I came for the service and there was some polluted and difficult heart inside of me, but I am taking that same difficulty and going out, then there's a problem, right? That means I'm not listening, and not listening to the word of God, there will be no change, right? If I just come here and sit and go, that doesn't mean change comes to everyone. We need to listen. If we don't listen, then we don't change. That's why God He precisely in the Bible divides the house that is successful and the house that is not successful. The house that is successful, why it is successful, and the house that is not successful, why it is not successful. That is, showing me how am I living inside of the church. I am living as a son of the failure house or a son of the successful house. If I have the heart of a person who lives in the unsuccessful failure house, then I need to repent my heart from there. There is a time where God works. That time is when whatever He says to you, do so. God if He's not going to directly come and tell you do like this, do like that, right? Then some ghost would have to appear. But God speaks to you through the church. Listen to that voice. And no matter what He says to you, say, yes, Father. Unite your heart and work. Yes, Father, we'll do like that. Through that person, God powerfully works. But then little bit burdensome, then that doesn't make any sense. How for these 3 years there is famine continuously everywhere? But how only in this house there is a bin of flour or a jar of oil that doesn't run dry? How can that even exist? If something like that was there, then why all the people have to starve and die? We're all facing the same difficulty. What are you saying? Are you asking me to believe such nonsense? But the Zarephath widow, in her house, continuously there was food. So that widow, as she was making that cake, that bread, the servant of God, if she believes that the servant of God does not lie, that servant of God told me, if I make this first small cake for him, then in my house the oil and the flour, it will continually get poured, it will not end. If she believes this, when she imagines that, she's so happy to make that small cake for the servant of God. Making that small piece of cake for the servant of God first, it's something so happy. But then the problem is, if she doesn't believe that, she would get irritated. I mean, what on earth, does this make any sense? For 3 years, the famine is going on, everyone is dying. No matter how much we pour and pour, it is not ending. How much ever we use the oil or the flour in the bin, it will not finish. That doesn't make any sense. What he is saying? And let's just eat and die. What is the point of all this? In that way, if she had thought, with that small bit of flour that remained, if she had eaten only with her son, and how many days could she have lasted, with that small piece of bread? But later on, as time passed by, she would have just starved to death with her son. And at that time, how would she have died? She would have complained against God. God didn't help me, and she would have died. Because they're all people who believe God, right? Why is God not working in me? Why God, He is not working in me? This part is different for us. I was living such a wrong spiritual life. Father, that doesn't make any sense. What are you saying? What does that mean? It means that I am much smarter and better than the Father. So always, no matter what the Father says, they have to do their own calculation. But if they really respect the Father, they will never say anything like that. No matter how much strange thing the Father says, they said, okay, Father, we'll do like that. Like this, they would have spoken. Once, I went to the Philippines. When I went to the Philippines, after the Cambodia camp finished, we went to the Philippines. So pastor, during the Cambodia camp, over there, who he meets is, he had a meeting with the son of the prime minister. So he has to eat quickly and he has to go. So in the morning, we had exercise time with pastor. So we went to the swimming pool and swam. So when we swam, we became late. Quickly let's eat and quickly let's wash and go. We became late. So each room has a bathroom, and there were two rooms. So Kimakcho pastor and another pastor went in one bathroom, and me and Pastor Park, we went into another bathroom. So pastor, if you go up the shower room, it's slippery, right? So I went inside the glass covered shower room. So pastor, pastor, he told me to go inside the comfortable and good place, and he said, I will shower here outside. So in my heart, I feel a little uncomfortable. Pastor, you please shower here. No, you go and do there. Okay, fine. Pastor, do you have any shower towel there? No. Would you like to use it? No, you use it first. What about shampoo? We don't have shampoo here. Pastor, here, shampoo, soap. Pastor, soap. Hey, you just use it first, he said. Then soap and shampoo, as I used it before Pastor Park, do you think my heart would have been comfortable? I'm not a good person, but what kind of thought was, there is how the older person should use it first? No matter what he tells me, I cannot just accept it as it is. So we ate food, and when we were eating food, Pastor, he was like, let's eat quickly and go. So not even 1 minute passed, but Pastor put his spoon down, and I also left my spoon down and got up. As soon as we got off the Salmonims, they quickly came and they removed all the dishes because they have to do the VIP setting in the venue. But Pastor saw me and he said, wait, you eat more and go. But as soon as Pastor stood up, all the Salmonims, they started to remove the dishes. So I told Salmonim, wait, Pastor said eat and go, right? Pastor, we don't have time to eat now. We have to go there and do the VIP setting. No, Pastor Park said eat and go to the Salmonims, right? No, we don't have time to go, Pastor. But one of the co-pastors, Salmonim, she said to the Salmonim, I think we should eat and go. Pastor Park said eat and go. No. So that Salmonim said, hey, you keep quiet, what do you know? But I took the spoon. I took 1 spoon of rice and I put it in my mouth. And I said, what is so difficult? If Pastor Park is telling you to eat and go, you eat and go, to that Salmonim, I said. So she also took 1 spoon of rice and she put in her mouth and she kept it down. So after the Cambodia camp finished, we went to the Philippines. In the Philippines, the traffic was very serious. So Pastor, he started early and he went early to the airport. So he had a lot of time, so he was reading the Bible. So we also started reading the Bible, and then Pastor, he got up and he was going to do the checking in. But after some time, Pastor, he sat down. So we were standing next to Pastor with all of our trolleys, and there were so many people. So Pastor saw us standing and he said, hey, sit here. So next to Pastor, there was one Filipino woman sitting, and she was wearing a mini skirt. So Pastor, he gave us a seat over there. He said, no, just sit here. We said, Pastor, it's okay. You said, no, sit here. So that's a very narrow seat. There's no place to sit only. So that I have to sit on top of that Filipino woman then. So that woman, she was feeling uncomfortable, so she just got up and went. That's why people, when you say listen as it is, it doesn't really work out much, right? If you want to listen to something as it is, he's older, he should be a little more comfortable, this kind of thought comes. When you're taking a shower, pastor should use the towel first. No, pastor should use the shampoo first. No, he should use the soap first. No, me trying to use it first. I feel so uncomfortable doing that. I'm such a good man. No, why would I have gone to prison? I'm thinking, such a good man, why would I have gone to prison? But I'm not even good. However, that good thoughts come, and it makes us unable to listen as it is. So in this world, the most spiritual person is he who listens as it is. Spiritual life, 100% they have to do as it is. But if they listen as it is, God, he works. But Satan, he makes us to ruin, right? That is the purpose of Satan. The purpose of Satan is to make us ruin. That's why we always feel it is wrong. That small jar of oil, just because you pour that, what is the use of that? That doesn't make any sense. Satan wants us to ruin. Always, I am correct. I am better than you. That is why whenever I hear something nonsense that doesn't make any sense, that is the word spoken by the sons of the failure house. That's nonsense. In the Bible also, there are so many things that does not make sense. Inside of the church, the things that we say are so strange, right? So surely there'll be something that makes no sense to us. It's burdensome. So in our heart, because we don't like to do burdensome things, that's why there is no work of God. That's why God, in our hearts, he has to make a time to work. That time to work, no matter how foolish the church is, or how ignorant this church seems to be, how illogical it seems to be, it feels as though something will go wrong. When it's burdensome, people, they automatically avoid. God, if we make the time for God to work, then that means no matter what he says to you, do as it is. As it is. If you just do as it is, then God through you, because his time has been made, whatever you do powerfully, God will work. But Satan wants to make you unable to experience the work of God, and that's why always he gives a thought. Does that make any sense? That's nonsense. That is a thought that the house which does not succeed has. God, how does he work? Through the church he works. Where are you going to meet God? Where are we going to meet God? So the more experience we have, the more experience in spiritual life we have a lot of standards that are fixed. That's why no matter what anyone says, we feel like, nah, I don't think so. So that's so frustrating. That makes us so difficult. Satan, in order to ruin us, he is not allowing us to listen as it is. Father, do you think I will do like that as you say? Father, I am bringing the cow from the stable. Put the ladder, okay, Father. Pull the cow up the roof, okay, Father. That is the sons of the successful house. Amazingly, from then on, the way starts to open up. All wisdom begins from there. Pastor, he said like this. What he said was, hey you, within this year, you have to run all the prisons in Korea. He said that when I visited some 2 or 3 prisons. So suddenly I had gone to Mokpo. In the Mokpo prison, they asked me to give a mind education lecture, and that person said, Pastor, in the month of April from our headquarters, we have a workshop for this kind of character education, and all the commissioners and in charges of all the prisons will come. Pastor, why don't you go as a representative of our prison? Yes, please do go. I can go. Within 1 week of Pastor speaking those words, that happened. I didn't even know what that meeting was. But when I went over there, all the prison in charges had come from the whole of Korea. So I was just sitting at the very back because I don't have anything to say. No, I was just sitting and listening. So finally, in order to get some title and topic, they were discussing how we should train and make the prisoners to reform. So finally, the MC came out and said, is there anyone who wants to say anything? Is there anyone who has an opinion? So at that time, I went out and I spoke. And I said, hello everyone. In the year 87, I was put in prison. And for 16 years, I was a prisoner, an inmate. But after I was released, I'm living very happy life. But coming to this place, I cannot say that I'm happy. Why? Because until I reached over here, how much I made all of you suffer and how much pain you would have all had. If, for example, if I say I'm happy, then it is you who have made me happy. I caused a lot of problems in the prison and I made a lot of mistakes, but a person like me who is not like a human being, to make me into someone who resembles a human being, in the prison you have introduced me to this kind of a Reformation education. You introduced me to Pastor Aksu Park in the prison, and that caused me to live in a completely new direction. So if I'm happy today, it is because all of you have given me this happiness. I just simply said this. But the problem is, after that we directly breaked for lunch and everyone had gone to eat lunch. When I went to eat lunch, so some director of one prison, he brought a card, his business card. He said, 20 years I have been working as a prison in charge. So means they also have to live in the prison, right? So I was always worried about when I have to stop working. So I wanted to always retire, because whenever I see the life in prison, I was never thinking that I'm happy or felt like I'm living a meaningful life. I never felt like that. So he told me like this, but today I changed my thoughts. As living as a prison guard, the fact that my job is so meaningful and so precious, today you taught me that, Pastor, please don't come back to prison. Please live a happy life continually. Then I think all of our prison guards also will be so happy. So in that way, he brought his business card. All the other prison guards and prison in charges, I got 35 cards that day. They all brought it to me. So they said, please come to our prison, please give a lecture. In one day, the way to go to all the prisons in South Korea opened at once. After Pastor spoke those words in that same week, at that time, no matter how foolish a person might be, this is spiritual life. Whatever Pastor Park says, just listen as it is. The things that could not have happened started to happen. We thought we should visit all the prisons and beg them and please you all, please allow, give us I'll put my profile there. It's a very complicated process to get into even one prison. But from that time onwards, if I just God, He has made our heart, He led our heart in such a way that we could not help but to listen as it is. From that time onwards, the direction of my spiritual life completely changed. Today, to that Zarephath widow, the God who worked, He is working in you the same way, and He wants to work through you the same way. But you, after listening, no matter what God says to you, do as it is. This this is the time for God to work. If you make the time for God to work and wait, if that heart is made, then from now onwards in your life, no matter what you do, God works. That Zarephath widow continuously, imagine as she pours out, the oil is continuously coming out from that jar of oil. Just imagine how happy she would have been. So that Zarephath widow, it seems she repented. Ah, God, I'm so happy. I wanted to just eat that final piece of bread with my son and die. But God, you're giving me such a blessing. I'm so thankful. God, but until now I lived such a wicked life. Truly, God, if I had just listened to the words that you had spoken as it is. But I thought I was so smart. I thought no matter what anyone said, that doesn't make any sense. That's nonsense. That's why, my family became so difficult. And that's why we made church so difficult. God, I will change my heart. So that past where I lived such a wicked life, I being able to reflect on that, on the other side, so thankful that she's able to learn God. That Zarephath widow, don't you think she would have lived like that? Today, let's change our heart, 10 years, 20 years, just because you lived spiritual life, that doesn't mean God will work. Just because you know a lot, the more you know, it just doesn't happen as it is. The more experience accumulates, it doesn't happen. That is how Satan works inside of you. 10 years back I received salvation, 20 years back I received salvation. But if you don't do as it is, God doesn't work. Even if I receive salvation today, if I consider church as big, and if I can do as church says, then God can work. So always when I see we cannot understand the way that God guides us. So God, He comes to you with something that doesn't make sense, right? How can oil continuously come even though you pour and pour? Where is a bin of flour that never runs dry? That's what God is saying, right? From today onwards, everyone in your hearts, please make the time for God to work. Then for everything from today, God, He will work. God, He will do everything. From now onwards, no matter what He says to you, what nonsense. It's like a habit, right? If those words come out from you like a habit, then what you should do? From beside, if your husband says that, the sister has to slap the brother on the lips, okay? Because of that, our families is not working out. If the sister says like that, the brother has to slap her on the mouth. And that's why we will ruin. Because of that heart, we were difficult. Let's change our heart now. Just say yes, okay? You understand? Let's all say yes. Everyone say yes. Yes, that's how you have to do. If you do like that, then God through you, He will work powerfully, and that is a heart which can drag the work of God towards you. Knowing a lot, that makes you say, what nonsense. You go in the direction of a failure house. Knowing a lot is useless. No matter how much I experience God, whatever it is, if you don't listen as it is, then from that time onwards, God will not work. So from today onwards, let's change the direction. No matter what He says to you, if you can do as it is, then God through you, He will work powerfully. And God, He will work powerfully in our church. I had this heart.